on schedule, as you can probably imagine. So the next will be Jeff Smith. I'll keep it really short. Jeff Smith is a research fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center focused on South Asia. He's the author-editor of Asia's Quest for Balance, China's Rise and Balancing in the Indo-Pacific, and of Cold Peace, China-India Rivalry in 21st Century. He has contributed to multiple books on Asian security issues, testified as an expert witness before multiple congressional committees. So I would like to welcome Jeff Smith.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you to Sanjay. Thank you for organizing this wonderful panel. I'm not sure where Sanjay's off to, but I'm sure he's floating around somewhere. Jivan. And thank you to the speakers who came before me for very heartfelt, compelling presentations. You've actually put me in a difficult position speaking after such a heartfelt testimony, and really asked me to speak on the U.S. policy toward Kashmir, which by comparison is frankly a sanitized and rather abstract concept. So it feels like there's a bit of a disconnect here. But I think it also is important for those of you who are interested in what's happening there to know where the United States is in terms of policy and where it's headed. So I'm going to speak dispassionately about that. But I do want to note, it's not something I've talked about much before, but I did have the opportunity to spend some time in Kashmir many years ago. And I think I was brought here because I'm known as a plain speaker. I speak very candidly and from the heart. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I have been to many beautiful and many exotic places on earth. And nothing was as beautiful or as magical or as exotic as Kashmir. Nothing. Not even close. There's no near competition. And it is always, I think, since then held a special place with me. And I can only imagine if I had been lucky enough to be born in this magical place and I had been driven out, that I would be fighting with the same vigor, fighting to restore justice and fighting to return home. So you do have my sympathies. I do have a personal connection to this, and it was very moving to hear these stories. And before I talk about U.S. policy, maybe I can just piggyback off where this conversation was left, which is that this story hasn't gotten out there. I study South Asia. I mean, I focus on this area, and I don't know enough about this story, let alone the average American, the average politician. There's been a narrative battle going on, and I think on this question, Article 370, I think India has been on the losing end of that narrative battle. It hasn't done a good job fighting and explaining why it's done what it's done, and I don't think the Kashmiri Pandits have fought that narrative battle well enough, and I don't know why. I don't know why that story is ignored in the press. I don't know why Pakistan's narrative about what's been going on in Article 370 seems to always get favored treatment or status, but it's a real phenomenon, and I think it was going to require ongoing work to combat that narrative. So time is short, and you have other very important people to hear from, but I do want to fulfill my mandate and talk about where the United States policy on Kashmir and Article 370 is. And very quickly, it is essentially threefold. First, the Trump administration has determined that it is an internal matter for India to decide. It did not affect the border with China or the border with Pakistan, and so efforts by both of those countries to portray this as some kind of international incident that requires external mediation has been rejected. Second, any issue that Pakistan does have with Article 370 should be taken up with India in a bilateral manner. Again, there is no room for the United Nations or the United States to intervene, to prompt mediation, unless it is requested by both sides. And we know that that is very, very unlikely. The second part of that is the Trump administration has encouraged India to return to the negotiating table with Pakistan. But, and this is the important but, That is going to hinge off of Pakistan's seriousness of effort in ensuring that groups don't take advantage and engage in cross-border infiltration, and that there are serious steps to combat terror financing. The third component, and we've begun to hear more of this lately, is the hope that restrictions in Kashmir end. Restrictions on communications, on movement, on assembly, the detention of local Kashmiri politicians, the Trump administration, and a growing number of members of Congress are concerned about these restrictions, and as it moves into the second month, some of these restrictions, many of them have been lifted, some still remain in place, and they're getting more and more international attention. Regardless of how you feel about that criticism, or whether you think it was justified, that criticism is growing. At the UN General Assembly last month, you heard the leaders of Turkey, of Malaysia, the OIC issued a statement expressing concern about the situation there. As I mentioned, several US congressmen and senators, including Elizabeth Warren, have issued tweets or statements saying they're concerned about the situation. America is a democracy. I don't have any fundamental problem with an American congressman or American citizen saying that they are concerned about the situation and they want it to improve. What I want to make sure is that US policy on the Kashmir question doesn't change. I think the administration is right and is sound to say this is an internal affair for India and that it has no role in coming in and mediating the dispute there. And so I am getting the signal, and I know I need to wrap it up here quickly, but I just end on the note that I want to encourage you to keep fighting to get your narrative out there, and India as well. Almost any time you see this issue touched on in the press, I've never seen a thorough and honest investigation into why India might have done this. Why it thinks that revoking Article 370 might actually improve the economic conditions, the human rights conditions, and correct past injustices. That narrative has not gotten out there. What you hear is, well, it's the BJP doing this. Well, this is the only Muslim majority state, so it must be for insidious reasons. There's not an actual thoughtful examination of the justifications the Indian government has given, including by Foreign Minister Jaishankar. So I encourage the Indian government to do a better job getting their narrative out there, and I encourage everyone here to keep fighting the good fight. Thank you.
Okay, so next we're going to have Bharat Gopalswamy, is a senior fellow at ORF. He serves as the Vice President of Strategic Ventures. Sure.
I'm the interrupter here, and I apologize. There are two extraordinary members of the House of Representatives that have come to pay tribute to all of you and what's taking place here this evening. The first, ladies first, Congresswoman Doris Matsui from Sacramento, California. You know, she holds immigration very in the center of her heart, and she is a remarkable story. She was born in an internment camp because her family, Japanese Americans, were interned, and this little baby girl came into this world, and then she grew up and she became a member of the United States Congress. Isn't that beautiful? And my brother friend, she's my sister friend, this is my brother friend, this is Congressman Mark DeSaulnier from the East Bay in the Bay Area. Mark has a sense of joy about him every day. No matter how dark the news may be, no matter how high the mountains are that we need to climb, no matter what the challenges are, he has an eternal, beautiful optimism about him and about our country. And he knows what it means to be a friend. And because he's such a good one, he has many. He has many in the house. Just come up and say hello. Just come up and say hello. And thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and I want to just say that Anna Issue is a very dear friend of mine and a mentor, in fact. And she's probably the most thoughtful individual in the House of Representatives, along with my brother, too, Mark Desagnier. We're very close in Northern California, and we support each other. And we really want to understand many of the issues that trouble all of us. And for all of us, too, we really want to make sure we learn, we listen, and we understand. And that, for us, is something that's very important, and that's why Anna Issue is so important to us. In many areas, we are really very focused on, obviously, some of the big issues of the day, which are maybe more domestic issues like healthcare and technology and environment. But critically is the human issues that really do drive us. And I think for all of us here, we know that those are the issues that are most critical as human beings. So I have to say that so much of what I know about and learn about, I learned from my good friend Anna Issue. So thank you very much for embracing her. Thank you.